Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called The Finest Meal You'll Ever Have, written by TelekineticGuitar. At the end of the 22nd century, many of Earth's colonies revolted. Within days, enemies of Earth's mighty empire declared war, hoping to take advantage of the chaos. Forced to fight battles on all fronts, we had been dragged into the center of the Third Galactic War. After nearly 3 decades of bloodshed and meaningless carnage, Earth and her allies emerged on top. In the aftermath, countless planets lay destroyed and people all around the universe prayed for peace and prosperity. All the involved parties ceased fire and finally, soldiers could return to their homes. Like many others, General Rayleigh wanted to put all that had happened behind him. He had led many of Earth's troops to countless victories, and now longed to peacefully settle down and discover his place in this new world. For his service to the Empire, the President awarded him a hefty pension and a manor on the planet Leos, the birthplace of his late mother. He had spent his last 20 years fighting. War was all he knew, and all that he was good at. To somebody who'd been in a battle his entire adult life, the normal world seemed foreign and empty. Rayleigh, however, was not a man to live life without a purpose. He planned to spend his first month introspecting and thinking about how he wanted his new life to shape up. Leos consisted of many fertile and uncultivated lands. He could spend his money to buy land near his house and become a farmer. Else, he could use it to buy a spaceship and spend his remaining years exploring the galaxies. The possibilities were endless, and soon Rayleigh was overwhelmed with choices. One day, an unusual guest came to visit him. She was an old woman who'd traveled halfway across the galaxy to speak to him. By the time she left his house, Rayleigh had once again found purpose in life. Ennis had been Rayleigh's closest friend in the war. They originally met each other as recruits in the training camp, and later they'd been assigned to the same battalion. For 8 long years, they fought countless battles side by side. On one of the missions, they'd been stranded on an inhospitable planet. After roaming the land for many days, they finally came across a crashed and abandoned spaceship. Ennis confirmed that he could fix the radio, and help would arrive the next day. That night, as they waited for rescue, they ate their first meal in days. It was a rotten apple they'd found in the cockpit. It tasted bitter, but the two quickly divided it between themselves and devoured it within seconds. Later that night, they talked about what all they'd do once the war was over. It had become a tradition for them to do so after every mission. It was one of the few things that kept them going. This time, they talked about opening their own restaurant. They would offer customers the finest meal they could ever have. Both knew, however, that the end of the war was nowhere in sight. They had even begun to lose hope of ever seeing the planets coexist peacefully in harmony. Less than a year later, Ennis was gravely injured in combat. He succumbed to his injuries before the medic could get to him. Following that day, Rayleigh started having regular occurrence of nightmares. Rayleigh's unexpected visitor was Ennis's mother. Having lost her only son, she had waited 13 years for the war to end. When it did, she left to seek out Ennis's dearest friend and learn about her son's final moments. The two talked for hours, telling each other stories about the man who had meant so much to them. In the midst of their conversation, Ennis's mother talked about his lifelong dream to open a restaurant. Rayleigh was taken aback when he heard this. He was reminded about the time they talked about doing so together. He'd never realized that his friend genuinely held such a dream. The moment he found out Rayleigh had made up his mind, he would honor his best friend's memory by accomplishing his lifelong dream. He would open a restaurant and figure out a way to offer its customers the finest meal of their lives. Rayleigh was a smart man. He had ranked first in his military when it came to mental proficiency, and was one of the youngest generals in his squadron's history. His strategies and tactics had tipped the tide in his side's favor on many occasions. He realized that although he was no longer a soldier fighting in a war, the mindset and strategies he had developed in wartime would be of use in the business world. Acknowledging that his knowledge regarding the dining industry was scarce and lacking, he made a decision to spend the next 5 years studying the history, science, and psychology of food. He traveled to Earth in an attempt to study its galaxy-renowned cuisines. By his second year, he learned Italian, Indian, Thai, Chinese, Mexican, and every other cuisine he had ever read of or seen. At each step, his main focus lay on thinking about how he could use his new knowledge to craft the finest meal a customer could have. He held the belief that successful business was driven by innovation, which came only from technology and research. By the end of the 5th year, Rayleigh had a clear vision of what his restaurant would be and how it would operate. He spent the next 3 years documenting and refining his plan. By this time, his friends from the war had reached high positions. He proceeded to schedule meetings with investors he'd served with. They invited him to pitch his idea in front of everyone. Within the span of 20 minutes, everyone in the room was floored by Rayleigh's idea, and a huge number of venture capitalists agreed to pour in huge amounts of money for the project. As the year went by, suspense and mystery regarding the restaurant continued to build. 11 years after he'd first decided to honor his dearest friend's legacy, Rayleigh finally declared Ellis and Rayleigh open. The tagline read, "The finest meal of your life." He had carefully selected and invited various food critics and journalists who were now lined up outside. Sharp at 12, the doors opened for the very first wave of customers. Standing on top of the tallest tower in the city, the view from Ellis and Rayleigh was impeccable, and its interior was impressive. Rayleigh stood proud in its center, waiting for everyone to head to their assigned seats. None of the tables had any menus or cutleries. Instead, in front of each person, there lay a slick, rectangular slab of glass. Transparent with light shade of blue, many brought up its resemblance to a smartphone. When everyone had finally been seated, Rayleigh spoke. "Thank you all for coming. Initially, the plan was to start with a huge ceremony. However, we collectively decided that it would be best if, instead, we cut right down to the chase and begin the demonstration. I request all of you to pick up the rectangular slab you see on your table." Puzzled, everyone did as asked. "Now hold it in front and place your tongue on it, as if you're licking it." The entire restaurant erupted in laughter. With General Rayleigh had to be joking. He couldn't possibly be serious. They spoke amongst each other. Rayleigh joined in the friendly laugh. After everyone calmed down, he proceeded to demonstrate. Holding up one of the slabs that he'd been keeping in his pockets, he proceeded to open his mouth and place his tongue on it. After a few seconds, the device beeped and turned to the light shade of green. On a slab, there was now a digital timer. It had been set to 9 minutes and instantly started counting downwards. Curious, everyone around the room proceeded to imitate what Rayleigh had just done. Slowly, slabs all around turned green and multiple counters started. Some started as few as 5 minutes and some started all the way from 25. This time, when Rayleigh spoke, all eyes were on him. "When the timer ends, it means that your meal has been prepared. One of your waiters will bring your dish to you. Your dish will initially be covered with a lid. We request all of you not to open the lid until everybody else has been served." Everyone waited. When the final dish had been served, Rayleigh finally asked them to open their lids and have a look at their food. The entire room gave out a collective gasp. On each plate there lay a different dish. Some people had been served pizza, and others had gotten noodles and rice. Countless dishes, spanning a huge variety of cuisine, could be found in the room. Even people who were served the same dish noticed huge variation in the ingredients and flavors. Few of the meals were given accompanied by a custom-made dessert or drink. Using state-of-the-art technology, our research team has devised a way to analyze your taste buds and monitor their interactions with your brain. Using this rectangular device, we determine the dish you'll most likely prefer. Once determined, our team of versatile chefs begins making your favorite dish, ensuring that it's cooked and made in the manner you'd enjoy the most. The demonstration left the crowd wild. Most of the attendees were still shocked from having seen their personal favorite dishes suddenly appear in front of them. Business analysts unanimously predicted that this new restaurant would revolutionize the entire food industry and go on to become massively profitable and successful. They turned out to be right. When the first word of Edison Rayleigh got out, residents all over the galaxy rushed to experience the finest meal they'd ever have. Within weeks of opening, the restaurant became one of the hottest places to dine at in the galaxy. Within a year, reservations were required to be made weeks, if not months in advance. After a huge successful IPO, Rayleigh began to work to set up branches throughout the universe. By the time he turned 90, Edison Rayleigh had turned into one of the most profitable organizations of the century. Rayleigh retired soon after, passing on his responsibility and leaving the company in the hands of a trusted board of directors. A few years later, he was invited as a guest of honor for one of the company's press conferences. The research department had been working very hard, and it was finally time to announce their latest innovation. The new restaurant would do more than just analyze one's taste buds to create meals. They would also factor in the customer's DNA and brain activity. This would allow the company to factor in dietary restrictions for certain meals, and even recreate items from the customer's memory. The crowds cheered as General Rayleigh walked to the stage, soon to become the first person to try out Edison Rayleigh's revamped technology. As he had done so many years ago, Rayleigh picked up the slab and placed his tongue on it. He then proceeded to let the device scan his brain and collect a sample of his DNA. When he was done, the timer displayed a waiting time of just 3 minutes. Soon, his food arrived. Rayleigh lifted the lid for everyone to see. On the plate lay nothing but a crudely cut piece of rotten apple. Everybody in the crowd looked puzzled. A voice shouted from the back of the crowd. "Does it not work?" it asked. "Quite the contrary," replied Rayleigh, wiping off a tear that just formed in his eye. He proceeded to eat, truly, the finest meal he would ever have in his life. End of story. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Vidmori, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.